Wrestling Roundtable Radio is back on the air. Hello, I'm Eric Santamaria, the host, here at Blog Talk Radio or Go Fight Live or YouTube, not live. If you're listening to us on YouTube, this is not live, and we encourage you to call in and listen live. The number to call is 347-857-4647, Tuesdays at 11 on Blog Talk Radio or broadcast, also simulcast, I should say, on Go Fight Live. But you can simulcast it anywhere you want. You can get the player to embed it on your blog, or site, anywhere you want to put it. You can get that link on our account on blogtalkradio.com. And if you want to get any of this stuff, you can just go to WrestlingRoundtable.com, the home, the hub of everything Wrestling Roundtable, this community we are trying to build for mixed martial arts and pro wrestling fans, and lots of content for you there. There will be a huge news update later in this week, but right now we've got recaps and columns galore. Bill Treadway has been going crazy lately, doing recaps of Raw, Superstars, pay-per-views, old pay-per-views and DVDs, lots of stuff. And Zach Fellows over in England has been recapping SmackDown, and also we've got some submissions from you, the fans. If you want to submit any of your work, please send it over to WrestlingRoundtable@gmail.com. Joe in Las Vegas, who called in on our last show, did some reviews lately, one of which was WCW Sold Out 97, which was really fun to relive and read. James out of the UK is going to be doing a feature on the history of British wrestling. So that's pretty cool, and we look forward to that as well. And while we're mentioning all things Wrestling Roundtable, you can go to the website, like I said. Please go to our Amazon store. If you want to get anything, doesn't have to be WWE, TNA, UFC, whatever. If it's on Amazon at all, please do it through our store so we can get a cut of it. Or you can just get the Wrestling Roundtable t-shirt and show your support if you go to a live show. Let people in on the fun. 11 p.m. Tuesdays. But, of course, we've got version 0.5, whatever, from our message board listening over in England, so it's like 4 in the morning for him, so thanks for staying up late and listening to us. And now let's introduce the panel first. Will Brooks joins us. Hello, Will.
Hello, everybody. I am here and sexier than ever.
Thank you, Will. We have yet another sexy Will. Will Vafides. Hello, Will.
The original Will of Wrestling Roundtable. Yes, back from a wonderful trip at the Royal Rumble, and make sure everybody goes to WrestlingRoundtablePodcast.com. Remember, we got all the shows over there, and more importantly, TLDWrestling.com.
I wouldn't say more importantly, but I would plug that as well, TLDWrestling.com, and thank you, Will, for putting all our shows, our entire complete archive, over at WrestlingRoundtablePodcast.com. Joining the panel for the first time this year, someone that we've been missing recently, Jay Leto. Hello, Jay.
Hey, Eric. We're going to have a newsletter coming out later on this week. Just want to let the fans know. Also, I'm going to be tweeting live tonight during our show at Jason_Aleto. So tweet me, follow me, talk to me, do whatever you want to me except, rate me, abuse me, anything like that. So let's get the show on the road.
Yes, and if you go to Jay's bio over at WrestlingRoundtable.com, you can get the links to all of his information and sites. Everything that you need is on WrestlingRoundtable.com. If you see a picture, it's going to lead somewhere. There's definitely a link there, and we will be introducing a new panelist later on in the show tonight. There was a show this past Saturday I'd like to at least mention in passing really quickly. Pro Wrestling Respect 6. Midge, Brett Simonello, and myself over in Easton, PA. Thank everyone for coming out on Saturday. Pro Wrestling Respect will be returning in a couple months or so, but more information on that at WrestlingRoundtable.com as it becomes available. And we want to start off first with mixed martial arts. UFC's Fight for the Troops 2, which was Fight Night 23. Pretty good free show on Spike TV. And it seems like the heavyweights dominated that night. Pat Barry coming back after his loss to Crow Cop earlier this past summer, defeating Joey Beltran by unanimous decision, and a very emotional speech afterwards talking about his family who was in the military and how much it meant for him to be serving in, fighting in front of the troops that do serve, and that was a very good moment. And what do you think of Pat Barry's comeback, Will Brooks?
I thought it was cool. You know, it's nice to see the guy make a good strive to make a name for himself in the UFC. And anytime a guy is on a fight for the troops and actually has family ties into the troops, it's always nice to see him get a victory.
Moving on to the featherweight division, Mark Hominick defeating George Roop with a stunning first-round TKO. George Roop, very tall and lanky. He actually, if you're a movie buff, kind of reminds me of the killer in the Heat of the Night, who was actually also the attempted killer in Naked Gun 2.5, but it's a character actor. I don't know his name, but he's one of those guys, if you see his face, you'll be like, oh, that guy. Looks like he could be his son or anything. Anyway, George Roop looked impressive in his last bout with a big knockout, but he got knocked out this time, and Mark Hominick was promised a featherweight title shot against Jose Aldo. Or is it Jose Aldo? Everyone keeps saying Jose, but isn't it Jose? Anyway, that's going to be taking place at UFC 129 in Toronto. Mark Hominick and Aldo. Holy shit, what a fight. Hominick looked pretty good in this one, didn't he, Will?
Yeah, but he has no shot against Jose Aldo. Nobody does. He's unbeatable.
Well, maybe he'll put up a little more of a fight than you think. But Matt Mitrione defeating Tim Hague, first-round TKO as well, but Joe Rogan was pointing out how this former football player at heavyweight has just incredible footwork and speed. And even though he's working his way on up, he's a couple victories in, and that's great, Mitrione definitely did have those qualities, and it almost makes me, I don't want to say jealous or envious because it's not for myself, but imagine if Brock Lesnar, because we were criticizing his stand-up and his, at least, limitations that seemed to be exposed in that Velasquez fight we talked about on the last radio show. Imagine if Lesnar had that sort of footwork, Will.
Oh, God, he's unbeatable. He'd be amazing, but he doesn't, so we can't talk about it.
Well, hopefully he's been working on that, and we can see him improve on that in his next fight. But moving on to the main event of Fight for the Troops in the lightweight division, Melvin Guillard coming in with a first-round victory over Evan Dunham, knocked him out, and I may be in the minority here, because whenever you hear about divisions, and we just did a show criticizing some of the heavyweights, at least in UFC's division, because it was really good up until about this past year or so, when it seems injuries and other sort of setbacks have kind of withered down the division. Still got a lot of good guys in it, but I think its height definitely hit the other year or so. And the thing you always hear is that UFC's light heavyweight division is just so stacked and so competitive. Well, maybe so, but the division I look at now as that is the lightweight division. Melvin Guillard getting this great victory, I guess, has got a lot of eyes back on himself, but I think, especially with the influx of WEC lightweights, I think that division is probably the most stacked, even with the loss of BJ Penn. So what do you think of that idea, Will Brooks, and Guillard's victory?
Well, first off, Guillard, I always had a lot of talent, but he always seemed like he got in the way of himself too much. You know, like he maybe would think too much or just not do the right things in the right time and would lose to more skilled fighters. So, but now he's training with Greg Jackson. He seems like he's got a career on track and starting to pay dividends. He looks like he could be a lot better fighter. He might actually make a title run soon. But I do agree with you. The lightweight division probably right now, as we speak, is the most stacked. I used to think it was a light heavyweight division, but it seems like every time the light heavyweight division gets going, there's an injury to a major player, like when Shogun was out for a while, or when Machida was out for a while, and now Rashad Evans is out. So it's just kind of, it seems like as soon as it gets going, like it's going to be the premier division again, there's major injury to someone huge. What
do you think of the lightweight division, Jay? Does that match up to overcoming the light heavyweight division, perhaps, and being the most competitive as of 2011?
At this point, yeah, because there's so much depth in that lightweight division. Right now, you have a perennial contenders just lined up to challenge for that belt, and you know that Frankie Edgar and Gray Maynard are going to have another fight, and it should be great. So contenders are lined up. It doesn't seem like there's any end in sight, bearing injury, obviously, and that's pretty much what has plagued the light heavyweight division.
We're going to talk a little more about UFC in a minute, but I did want to at least mention Strikeforce Diaz versus Cyborg, which happened recently at the HP Pavilion in San Jose. Roger Gracie continuing his undefeated streak at light heavyweight when he defeated Trevor Prangley in a first-round submission via rear naked choke. It seems like the theme of the night, at least to me, from what I saw, is don't go to the ground. because these fights that started standing up, as every fight does, when it goes to the ground, it seems that was the fatal mistake. Roger Gracie, of course, from the jiu-jitsu family of the Gracies, had an incredible body figure four and used it to get that rear naked choke over Prangley. Herschel Walker also continued his undefeated streak at heavyweight, defeating Scott Carson with a first-round TKO. And last time I mentioned Herschel Walker, I brought up the story that broke where Strikeforce CEO Scott Coker was thinking of putting him in there with Mark Coleman or Don Fry, and I thought that was absurd. But, I mean, for 48 or whatever years old, Herschel Walker looks in incredible shape, and he looks pretty good in there. So maybe he'd fare a little better than I think. But middleweight champion Ronaldo Sakurai Souza defeated Robbie Lawler in the third round with a submission, rear naked choke, defending his title in a pretty good fight. Souza's style seems to be bull rushing guys right at the beginning, and there was some good exchanges, but once again, jiu-jitsu wins in the end. Rear naked choke on Robbie Lawler. And in the main event, the home state favorite, of course, one of the Diaz brothers, welterweight champion Nick, defeated Evangelista Cyborg Santos. And how Diaz was able to not only endure those vicious inside leg kicks that Cyborg was throwing in the first round for about the first 3 minutes, and then come back and get the advantage in the last minute or so of that round, unbelievable. And of course he goes on to submit Evangelista, and like I was saying at the beginning of the Strikeforce talk, going to the ground was a mistake. Santos takes him down, but that was just right in the position Diaz wanted, and it was unbelievable because you could see what great jiu-jitsu Diaz had, just immediately setting up for that arm bar, and it was just perfectly applied. It was great technique, and even though his wife, Christiane, was crying, she actually, I think, looked her hottest that we've ever seen. Not that you usually hear the word hot and it's that Cyborg in the same sentence, but those highlights worked wonders, didn't they?
I wonder if he's jealous that his wife is a better fighter than he is.
I don't think anybody needs to be jealous about that. I mean, the Cyborg name is appropriate. She's a machine. She's a monster, and that's really great that she's able to make herself pretty much the face of women's MMA. Good for her. But let's keep going, and let's move on to UFC 126, which took place this past Saturday. Miguel Torres makes his UFC debut at bantamweight, defeating Antonio Banuelos, but I don't think it was exactly the great fight that people were expecting out of Miguel Torres, and I think it was because of the reach. The relatively smaller Antonio Banuelos couldn't find an opening, it seems, and didn't lead to the most exciting fight, but Miguel won. What do you think, Will Brooks?
Oh, I love Miguel Torres. He's been one of my favorite fighters for like the last 4 or 5 years, ever since he was one of the pound-for-pound best in the world, was the WC champion. So to see him finally get his, after he had lost a couple fights, it's nice to see him finally get back on track and start winning some fights again. And I'm glad he won by unanimous decision. I agreed with it.
Yeah, I agree with the decision too. He seemed to have done enough to take the decision. To have a WEC showcase fight like this really was, it wasn't as exciting as you would have hoped it would have been with these two high quality, very energetic fighters. But they seemed to have given it their all, and I agree with the decision. Miguel Torres looked pretty good. He was pretty efficient with the strikes. And, the reach definitely had a big advantage in this fight.
Will Vafides, let's hear your thoughts on the two little Mexicans.
I never really watched WEC, so from seeing them from a UFC standpoint, it wasn't really entertaining. I think me and Jay were talking about more things was what's going to happen at WrestleMania, and we were talking about the fight. It wasn't that impressive. I heard Miguel Torres. I knew a little bit about him from WEC, but, again, nothing really exciting about the fight. It was just a slow way to start the main card. I don't think it was good for that. It's not good for that. If you don't really show something off, especially when it's your first main UFC fight, you're going to have a problem.
Yeah, I don't expect to see that sort of performance out of the lighter guys too often. I would hope, at least. I can't believe Banuelos at the end of the third round and the horn hit, and he's like, fuck! Come on, man. You had to know you were behind, and there was no urgency and no effort in his strikes up until the last minute. Come on.
Yeah, he went nuts. He started throwing roundhouse kicks, and he went crazy at the end. Too bad he didn't connect, because he could have knocked him the fuck out, but it didn't happen that way.
Yeah, he also threw him, I think, about 14 minutes too late, but moving on to the light heavyweight division that we were just talking about, John Jones, my man, defeated Ryan Bader. First man to defeat Ryan Bader with a second-round submission with a guillotine that he was on him and no one even knew it. I think that finish was kind of out of nowhere, but still happy that it happened nonetheless. John Jones, everyone keeps saying that he schools people, and he just looks so impressive. What do you guys think? Jay Leto, your thoughts on John Jones' meteoric rise?
Yeah, he really did make Ryan Bader look like a second-tier fighter in this fight. His reach is just unbelievable. He's very hard to get to. Bader was trying to shoot on him, and the sprawls it was perfect technique on the sprawls. It was just domination the entire first round. And the second round, he got the choke out. I like Ryan Bader. He's a good fighter. He did good against Nogueira. But if he can't take you down, and if he has to fight off his back, he's not going to do anything. And John Jones just proved why he's been rising so quickly, rising up the ranks. And it's going to be very interesting to see what happens in March, where he gets to fight Shogun.
Yeah, I agree with Jay. It was total domination. But I was really hoping he would win the fight with a north-south choke. He almost did it, and I'd never seen anyone finish a fight like that. So I was kind of rooting for him to do that, but he finished with a good old-fashioned guillotine.
I would have loved to have seen that, too. The first Dragon Sleeper finish in UFC, Will Vafides.
It was very neat. This is the first time I've actually seen him. But
really?
I've seen videos out. Yeah,
You've been missing out, man.
Yeah, I clearly. I mean, when I saw this guy's reach, I was like, wow. When I saw the stats on the screen, I was like, you got to be kidding me, right? This kid's like 23 years old. It was amazing. And then Rua came in the ring, which is great. So it's good to see those two are going to fight. I mean, I think if he wins the belt, that's going to be unbelievable. You know, this guy has like one of the fastest rises I think in UFC history, maybe except for Lesnar, but he's like the next one up there. He's so young, and yeah, Bader is a guy I know, and I love Ryan Bader, but man. That choke, especially came out of nowhere. All of a sudden, the crowd just like screams, "It's over!" I'm like, "Wait, what did I miss?"
Mm-hmm.
I didn't even see the choke.
Well, Rodney and I have been arguing about this for a while, and I'm still going to stick to my guns by saying this. But I've been saying for a while that if you put John Jones in the cage with the champion tomorrow, he wins. And I don't necessarily want to back down on that now, but I didn't expect it to come so soon, and neither did he. Apparently, Quentin Rampage Jackson turned down the initial offer because he thought it was too short of a time to lose weight, cut weight, and prepare for a title fight with just weeks to go. John Jones, however, of course, in fighting shape and pretty unscathed from the Ryan Bader victory, so they went with their second choice and went with the kid, the prodigy. How do you guys think that John Jones is going to do with Shogun Rua's first fight back from surgery, Jay Leto?
I'm pulling for John Jones. I think he's got a great chance to win this fight because Shogun Rua has looked great at times, especially against Machida in their last fight. But in the past, he's also looked a little bit slow. You know, against Forrest Griffin, he looked a little out of shape. Yeah, you don't know what Shogun you're going to get, considering he hasn't fought for so long. So I'm pulling for John Jones here. You know, I think that he has a good shot to upset him, and it would be amazing for UFC for this to happen because there's nothing better than upsets in this sport, and this would be a major upset because the guy's so young with so little experience compared to Shogun. So I'd love to see him win.
I'm definitely going to pull for Jones on this one. I can't wait to see this fight. I believe it's in Jersey. Am I correct on that?
That is correct. Myself and Will Brooks will be there in person.
And me and Jay will be at the bar watching it.
Yes, we will.
We didn't expect to see that fight. We expected to see Mauricio Shogun Rua, who, of course, looked incredible in his past couple fights against Machida, especially with that knockout victory, winning the belt. Of course, he's laid off for a long time with surgery. Seems like a lot of these Pride guys, even the younger one like Rua, have been just fucked up recently with Big Nog and Wanderlei, etc. But Rua's back. And even though he was preparing for Rashad Evans up until now it's John Jones. You think he's got enough time to switch strategy and get ready?
Well, I mean, both of them kind of fight a wrestling style, so the only difference is Jones is way better with submissions. That'd be the biggest difference. So, I mean, I don't think it's going to change his game plan too much. It's also still, 5 weeks away, so he still has plenty of time to, rearrange. I'm rooting for Jones because I'm a big fan. The only thing I hope, if whoever wins, we don't have, like, it doesn't have a screw job finish. We have to see a rematch 6 months later and, like, keeps the belt from being in contention.
Mm-hmm.
That's why I'm kind of getting a little tired of those kind of fights, but what are you going to do? They're kind of necessary, too.
Well, it's necessary, I suppose, to talk about what I believe was the co-main event, Forrest Griffin defeating Rich Franklin by unanimous decision. However, I hope that you guys have a lot more to say about it than I do, because that fight I had no interest in, don't really particularly care for either one. I was falling asleep during it. Seemed like it was okay when I could keep my eyes open, but I've really got nothing to say much about it, so I'll see if you guys do. Will Vafidez.
Very surprising that it wasn't as action-packed as it was built up to be. I mean, these two can definitely pull it on. They're both former champions. Griffin, he was the better man that night, but like I said, it wasn't really much to go on. There wasn't much happening on the fight. So yeah, that's all I got to say about it. There's not much to say.
I mean, it's two of my favorite fighters, so I enjoyed it. But yeah, I was hoping it'll be a little more action-packed as well with these two guys. But hey, I'm still satisfied. I like Forrest Griffin. I think he can still make another run for the title. So I was happy.
Yeah, it wasn't a great fight, but as Will Brooks, I'm a Forrest Griffin fan. I have been for years. The guy's fucking hilarious, and every time he goes out there, he seems to just always show some action and keep the pace going. And that's what he kind of did that against Rich Franklin a little bit, especially in the second round, where he was switching up the levels and just throwing fists at him. But I was really disappointed in Rich Franklin's performance because, you know, he was down 2 rounds to none easily in the third round. He didn't really show much. He didn't really show urgency until late in that round. So, you know, Forrest used his size. You could tell Rich had a little bit better cardio in the fight. But Forrest seemed to dominate him, and, you know, we'll see what's next for Forrest. I hear a possible Quentin Rampage Jackson fight could be in the works, the rematch there.
Well, Chris Harris sent me this text during that bout. I'd just like to remind you, fuck Forrest Griffin. So I guess he's not a fan. But someone I am a fan of, and I had to wake back up for after that fight, was Anderson Silva, middleweight champion, defense against Vitor Belfort, one of my favorites from back in the day in the UFC, and I was real nervous for this. Vitor Belfort, known for charging and striking, and I'll never forget that knee he landed on Marvin Eastman. Looked like a hatchet to someone's head, and I was hoping that wouldn't happen. Because I love streaks. I want to see Anderson Silva keep going, because, you know, Dana White keeps saying, well, these guys just have to beat one more guy, and then we'll think about it. Every fight between GSP and Anderson Silva, it's one more guy. And now he's saying that again. If GSP beats Jake Shields, we're going to do Anderson Silva GSP later this year for sure. Well, we'll see about that. But at any rate, Anderson Silva passing this test, I think, in rather unexpected fashion. Must be that Steven Seagal factor. Kicked Vitor Belfort's head off in just an incredible finish. So I will let you guys speak on the man who is undefeated in UFC and has the record for most defenses.
Will Vafidez and I watched this fight together, and we're sitting there, and there was a lot in this bar. There was a lot of Vitor Belfort fans. So we were a little bit surprised, a little shocked. I was anyway. But when this kick was unleashed, it came out of nowhere, and it went right up between Belfort's hands. If any of your listeners haven't seen this kick, you have to go watch it. Got him right on the chin. He crumbled to the ground. It was one of the most amazing knockouts I have seen in a really long time. Anderson Silva is, you know, top of the class. He's the number one guy out there. I honestly think if him and GSP fought tomorrow, I'd give Anderson Silva a huge advantage. Even if they were the same weight, this guy he finds a way to win, especially against Chael Sonnen a few months ago. He always finds a way to win, and it could be unexpected like it was the other night after 2.5 minutes of dancing. He just unleashed this ridiculous kick, and it was phenomenal. I jumped up and had no voice after the fight was over. I was pumped up. It was great.
Will Vafidez, your thoughts on Anderson Silva's stunning first-round knockout on Vitor Belfort?
Thank God that happened, because that show was going down the tube. So it's a good thing that happened. Thank God for Steven Seagal, ladies and gentlemen. He saved the night. He made that kick happen. But it was an amazing kick. Amazing. It was amazing to see that. And again, like Jay said, me and him were there together, and the place just exploded. I'm sure that happened everywhere. How unbelievably easy he got that kick in. You know, it's surprising that it wasn't blocked. I was very surprised how easy he got through that. So, but again, amazing kick. And like Jay said, if you have not watched it, you have to go see that kick. find it somewhere. It's around.
Will Brooks is in our chat room currently, which he's in every Monday night during Raw, I should add, and he was asking if that kick was more incredible than the Anthony Pettis highlight victory over Ben Henderson at WEC 53 in December. What do you think, Will?
It's tough because I think the Pettis kick is a little harder to pull off, but Anderson Silva's kick was just like one of those once in a lifetime. Who does a front kick? You know what I mean? And what's even more badass about it is that Steven Seagal trained him to do it. I mean, the only way that's toppable is if GSP starts training with Chuck Norris. I don't see how. That's the only way I think that's going to be topped. It was truly amazing, and it makes for a great story. And I would love to see Steven Seagal in his heyday in the cage. It would have been a lot of fun to watch.
Master of Aikido, how would he have fared? A lot of people ask how Bruce Lee would have fared, but we're talking about mixed martial arts, not specifically one discipline, and I want to go to a call before we move on. Amato in San Antonio, Texas. You're on.
Hey, what's up, Eric?
What do you have on your mind, Amato?
I was kind of mad at the beginning because they were dancing, and after Anderson Silva's Abu Dhabi running around the cage and everything, I wasn't really too sure if that was going to be if it was going to repeat. But as soon as that kick just happened, I was just like, "Are you fucking serious?"
I don't think it was so much dancing as, well, I mean, it sure looked like it for about a second, but I think it was more they were trying to feel each other out because we both know the striking ability of both guys, and they didn't want to make the first mistake, so to speak. They were kind of feeling each other out. Joe Rogan even pointed out Anderson Silva was a good counter-striker, and I don't think, much like going into the Forrest Griffin fight, I kind of knew in my heart that this wasn't the type of opponent that Anderson Silva was going to fool around with.
Yeah. I mean, I thought it was going to be one of those, down to the wire ones, like his last fight was going to be all the way to the end. I didn't think it was going to be a knockout, but like you said, it was the striking ability. It was bound to happen.
All right. Well, that's going to wrap it up this time for mixed martial arts. Before we move on to pro wrestling, which will be primarily WWE's Royal Rumble for 2011, some of the latest news items. WWE COO and director Donna Goldsmith resigned from the company with her last day set to be Monday, February 28th. Big shake-up there. EMLL's Mystico signed with WWE on Tuesday, January 25th, which EMLL has denied, this according to Lucha World. And they also wanted to point out that EMLL owns the Mystico character and gimmick, so he will probably be changing his name to something else once he gets out of developmental. Or well, actually, it'll be in developmental, but you know what I mean, once he's on TV. Former Minnesota Governor and WWE Hall of Famer Jesse the Body Ventura will release his fourth book, 63 Documents the Government Doesn't Want You to Read, this coming April, which I definitely look forward to as a conspiracy theorist. Loved his last book. Read it on the way to Phoenix last year. Over the weekend. It was really good. Recommend that. You could probably pick it up through our Amazon store if you're so inclined. The Coalition to Legalize Mixed Martial Arts in New York today held a rally to educate the public on the sport and attract mainstream media to fans who want to see MMA legalized. Held on the steps of Assembly Speaker Sheldon Silver's office in Lower Manhattan, Frank Shamrock, Tara LaRosa, and heavyweight champion of Strikeforce Alistair Overeem were on hand. Hopefully that works and we can get MMA legalized, and the moment they do, we will see UFC in MSG. Also want to congratulate Pro Wrestling Respect Jumping Jamelia Kraft, who has stated that she will be debuting in Mexico soon. So lots of good things happening for Pro Wrestling Respect wrestlers. And you can find out more about that at ProWrestlingRespect.com. Some of the news items that are on WrestlingRoundtable.com already and will be appearing this week. And before we go on to the Royal Rumble, I want to read the results of one of our latest polls. Some interesting stuff there. Our latest poll, who do you want to see come back at WrestleMania the most? Interesting votes here. 0% of the vote went to Ric Flair, our favorite womanizing, coke-sniffing, can't-give-it-up old man, who obviously held up TNA for some money in Europe. That went over real well. 0% of our fans voting wanted to see Ric Flair come back. There was a three-way tie next. 2% of the vote split between Shawn Michaels, Mick Foley, and Batista. Surprised Michaels ranked so low. Many more votes went to our joke Kung Fu Naki. So listen to that, Flair, Foley, Batista, Michaels. More people at WrestlingRoundtable.com want to see Kung Fu Naki come back. Goldberg got 14% of the vote. One of mine, I might add. Chris Jericho, 16% of the vote. Second place, Brock Lesnar at 21%. Lots of dreamers over at WrestlingRoundtable.com. But the lead and huge majority, who do you want to see come back at WrestleMania the most? Sting, 34% of the vote. Not exactly too surprising, but we also have one poll that Sting is in. More Sting talk later on, incidentally. Who should be in WWE's 2011 Hall of Fame class? And the voting is still going on at WrestlingRoundtable.com, so go over there and cast your vote. Before we get to the Royal Rumble, one other piece of business. Want to introduce a new panelist to Wrestling Roundtable Radio, exclusive to the radio show. You may know her as one of the top heels on the Wrestling Roundtable message board, as she has been labeled. Coriander Ake. Hello, Corey from Chicago.
Hello, Eric.
Corey, who I vehemently disagree with most of the time on the message board. You have done a lot of writing for the website, a lot of posting on the message board, tweeting. You've just been everything Wrestling Roundtable, listening and calling in every week. I thought because this show is about the fans, Will Brooks and Jay Leto have been on the panel. I thought I'd invite you on as a panelist for Wrestling Roundtable Radio, so welcome aboard, and do you have anything to say as your introduction?
Thank you very much for the honor, Eric. Let's get right to it.
All right. Well, I bet Will Vafides is very thrilled to have you here as well, aren't you, Will?
Oh, yes. I am jumping with joy with my Nexus armband on and my Intercontinental title. I am just so happy she is here.
Don't crush your TLD bear.
Which is available for purchase at TLDWrestling.com, by the way.
Let's move on to the Royal Rumble 2011. It was a rather interesting show. When we did our live blog, Will Vafides giving us live coverage from Boston, and Rodney LeConte, Will Brooks, and myself from back here in New Jersey, the first thing out of your mouth, Will, was the show sucked, and I heard that from a couple people. And in order, let's start with the opener, World Heavyweight Championship match, where Edge defending against Dolph Ziggler. First of all, am I the only one that thinks Edge looks pretty out of shape? I know he's waning down, so to speak, in his career. A lot of people think that he might be retiring in the next few years or so, but he just doesn't look very good, I think, physically. What do you think?
Well, I know he doesn't, because I'm the one who mentioned it to you and pointed it out to you when we were watching it. But you're right, he does look like he doesn't really, he doesn't take care of his body like as well as he used to, you know? And it's kind of sad. He's really sluggish in the ring now, too, so it's not even like he's making up for it.
Well, Dolph Ziggler, I think he's pretty good. I like the Kurt Hennig impression he does with his selling and some of his offense. And, of course, he's got the Fameasser. He kind of looks like Kurt Hennig performing in Billy Gunn's body, in a sense. And speaking of bodies, Vicky Guerrero's ass looking pretty good, I might add. But what do you guys think of the opening title match, Edge and Ziggler? How did that fare? Will Vafides, what was it like in the building?
First of all, I never said it sucked, so I would love to know.
No, that was Will Brooks who said that.
Oh, good. Well, he doesn't like anything. Live-wise, the first couple of minutes were a little boring, but I think the overall show, at least for that match, was very good. I think there's a lot of close calls with it, you know, and the whole storyline where he couldn't use the spear was really nice. I think that added to the match. Again, a very good match. I think that was a big step-out match for Dolph Ziggler, especially. It didn't really help Edge. It helps Dolph Ziggler, if anything, and it continues the storyline, and it builds him up. You know, so I think overall, I think the crowd was very into that match because I think there were a lot of Ziggler fans. We were switching Edge and Ziggler. You know, we were cheering for both. So, but overall, I think it was a very good match. I give that a good 3 out of 5 stars.
The best part about that match was Kelly's ass. But no, I mean, I'll give you credit. Dolph Ziggler is looking pretty good, right? Starting to look good right now. Yeah, so if he does really well at Elimination Chamber, I wouldn't mind him doing okay at WrestleMania as well. I think he has some potential. I think he could do something.
Kelly's back looked pretty good. That's the kind of sexy back I'd love to come on. Jay Leto.
Yeah, Kelly looked phenomenal. This was a like kind of your run-of-the-mill Edge Dolph Ziggler match. It really wasn't anything special in my mind. With that being said, I didn't mind it. It served its purpose. Nobody really believed Dolph Ziggler was walking out with the belt on the opening match of the show.
Why not?
Because I just for some reason I didn't think they would give the belt to Dolph Ziggler. I don't know how to support that. I just didn't believe it. I just knew Edge was going to win, especially with the stipulation with no spear. You knew he was going to spear him. You knew something was going to happen where he'd pull a win like that just to keep the heat going.
He sold it real well when he took it.
He sells everything like he's like fucking dying, dude. He really does. That guy, he oversells sometimes. But it was decent and got the job done. And when Vicky Guerrero is the most hated heel in the company, you need to have her with like a decent wrestler, somebody that needs the rub. And I think Dolph Ziggler is really getting helped out by that.
Kelly's butt came out after she finished attacking Vicky.
Let's move on to the other title match, The Miz defending against Randy Orton. I don't know about you guys, but I thought this match was at its best when Randy Orton was on the offense. Otherwise, I thought it was kind of sluggish. And as for the finish, with CM Punk doing the go to sleep on Orton and explaining it this past Monday by, you cost me the title years ago. And at first it sounds like continuity, but then I was thinking, well, why do you wait all these years to do it? I know the real reason is because they want to go with Miz and Cena at WrestleMania, and they still want to put Punk in a high-profile thing because they kind of dropped that him and Cena thing, at least in terms of like a big pay-per-view sort of one-on-one blow-off. Doesn't look like they're going to be doing that, but they still wanted him in a high-profile thing, so put him in there against the second top face, I guess. But as for storyline reasoning, it just seemed like, all right, I get that it was revenge, but why wait all these years for it? So what'd you think about the match and or finish, Will Brooks?
The match wasn't that bad. I mean, like, I like both wrestlers, and they're both good, but in terms, like you said, like, it really, to me, the ending kind of stupid with CM Punk and, revenge from 2 years ago. Who really gives a shit? But whatever. I mean, the party did have a good match at WrestleMania, so I won't complain.
As far as the match, I think it was nice. I think the Alex Riley thrown out of the ring on top of Nexus was pretty cool. He got thrown pretty far. So
more
that
like
was
he
probably,
jumped pretty far, but...
Yeah, okay, he jumped pretty far. Okay, thank you for correcting me. It was a nice ending. Again, it gives Miz like his character. He can't win without getting help kind of character. He's a vulnerable champion. So that's why when he faces someone like Jerry Lawler, it actually makes it look like Jerry Lawler can beat him. So that's the character that the Miz is, and it's always going to be like that. But I think the match was overall it was good. I think it was better than the last one. So I think the Rumble match was good. The ending was better this way with the way that Nexus came out.
Speaking of the type of character Miz is, I keep reading complaints all over about how Miz hasn't won clean yet and this, that, and the other thing. What do you feel about that, Jay?
They've been doing that with their champions who haven't been long-term main eventers lately. That's just what they've been doing. I really don't understand why. They did the same stuff with Sheamus, and now they're recreating it with The Miz. As far as the match is concerned, I actually liked the fact that they brought up the reasoning for it later on with CM Punk from 2 years ago when Orton punched him in the head backstage. I like that they actually went with history and they actually reminded the fans that there was history between the two wrestlers. That doesn't happen too often. They really ignore most history between wrestlers if it's over a year, especially. Right. And it's something where I was actually intrigued by it last night watching Raw. You knew there was going to be a screwy finish. There was no way The Miz was going over Randy Orton cleanly. But as far as the match was concerned, it was a decent match. I'd say it was average. It was like your normal Raw match between the two. So, it got the job done, served its purpose well.
They may have been doing that sort of style lately for their champions, but in this case, I really don't see how people can complain because, unlike, say, a bigger guy like Sheamus or Swagger, I think it's perfectly fine for The Miz to be doing this. Let's not forget that he is a heel, people, first of all. And not only is he a heel, he's a sneaky asshole heel. I mean, Billy Graham in the 70s beat Bruno Sammartino with his feet on the ropes to win the title. Aren't heels supposed to cheat? And especially this guy who's, I'm the reality star. I'm really hated by everyone because they don't think I should be there and everything. Well, it's perfect for him to be fucking cheating. What do you think, Corey?
Yeah, I think in this instance it is appropriate for Miz to be cheating. You wouldn't expect this out of a face. I actually kind of liked when Punk came in and he dropped Randy Orton's lifeless body onto the floor and then flung Miz right on top of him. I thought that was actually a nice visual. For the most part, the match was sort of average. It did come across as a Raw match, but that's not necessarily a bad thing. So it was not the best and not the worst either, just right in the middle.
Wow. Let's move on to the Divas 4-Way. Now, as bad as most of it was, I have actually some good remembrances of it because, first of all, Natalya Neidhart breaking out the double sharpshooter on pay-per-view once again, that's always impressive and cool, even though I don't remember her father ever doing it. That's another thing. But Eve's moonsaults looked great, and I think it's a nice change of pace from, let's say, Lita's moonsault in years past, where it looked like she was going to break her neck every time she did it. Her form was so shitty. Eve just got up there, looked great, smooth, and she was crying with the belt afterwards. It looked legit, and it was actually nice for her to make the belt seem that important that she wanted. So sloppiness and usual bad shit, as the Divas usually have, I still remembered the positive. What do you remember, Will Brooks?
The double structure was cool, but I was actually kind of disappointed when it turned out to be Eve. Why couldn't it be like the
Awesome Kong?
Awesome Kong, yes, thank you. Her and Natalya would have some banging matches. It doesn't get to Eve. She did give one kick-ass moonsault, but I don't know. I was a little disappointed it was her though.
Yeah, I agree with Will. It was disappointing when she was announced as the fourth member of the match because it didn't have any kind of pop. Nobody really cared about it. If it was somebody like Awesome Kong, or even I think Beth Phoenix would have gotten a bigger pop than her. Nothing against her, nothing personal. She's a fine wrestler and a hot piece of ass. And it was your run-of-the-mill diva match. Nothing special.
Corey, thoughts on the women's wrestlers? Divas.
I think it would have been better accepted by the fans if they had announced this as a four-way from the get-go. The match was supposed to be a handicap. It was supposed to be Laycool versus Natalya, and then last minute they decided to throw Eve in. I think if they wanted this to be a four-way, they should have announced this as a four-way going into all the promos and ads for Royal Rumble. I think that was the main problem. A lot of people were chanting at the beginning of the match thinking it was Khan, and then out comes Eve. She's not that bad, but she's not Khan. They wanted Khan. This would have been the perfect pay-per-view to debut Khan, and they missed it. I wasn't really too much into this match because I was rooting for Natalya. I thought she should have won. I
would have preferred to see Kong come out in the Rumble myself. But speaking of Laycool, did you know that is a play on my nickname, which is Cool Lay? Will Vafide, your thoughts on the Divas 4-Way?
Well, we just lost a lot of Roundtable radio users by that. But anyway...
Yeah, the TLD plugs haven't.
Yeah. No, they never leave. It's funny that you mentioned that because when I got to the arena and I saw the Royal Rumble Championship, it actually had Eve on the shirt.
Mm-hmm.
So it was going to happen, obviously, because I saw it before the match even happened. So, obviously, they obviously had that planned before that happened.
Right.
So that wasn't a last-minute thing. Yeah, everybody was chanting for Kong. I did see Kong leave the arena, so she definitely was there. It was a little disappointing when Kong didn't come out. I think Eve was just like, okay, it's Eve. Where has she been the last 3 months? That's the problem, that she hasn't been around. But again, the double sharpshooter was good, and I did like the moonsault. That was really good. And again, they had like a little shady of a finish where Eve had a pin, but so did Michelle McCool too. Eve got the belt, whatever.
Well, speaking of this match being, quote, made at the last moment, it brings up the mystery GM thing, and I find it hilarious whenever WWE comes up with shit like this where they have a mystery, but they didn't plan out who it's going to fucking be. somewhat reminds me of Austin getting run over or those sort of things, where maybe GTV if you like, although that's rumored to have been many people. But point being that it's clear they have no idea where they're going with this, with no end in sight, and I just find that shit sort of funny. One backstage segment with Bryan Danielson later, which is still somewhat surreal to see for me, seeing him on WWE TV. We move on to the Royal Rumble match. Now, as a general observation of the whole segment, which went well over an hour, I don't really think the 40 people really added to it this time. It seems to me that it's just the pattern of WWE upping everything. Everything's got to be bigger and more. Kind of like when Peter Jackson remade King Kong years ago. Now this time it's not one Tyrannosaurus he fights, it's 3. It's just more is better, I guess, mentality. Because, of course, the first year of the rebranded pay-per-views with more gimmicks, not one TLC, many TLCs. Not one Hell in a Cell, more Hell in a Cells. That did well the first year. The second year didn't do so well, but it seems they're continuing that. Well, what can we do this time? Let's up the Rumble 10 more people. I really don't think it added that much because I think there was some dead time and dead weight they could have cut and made it a little more streamlined, and I think you would have had a really good hour-long Rumble with the normal third, but let's go to the details right now. What do you have to say about the Rumble match itself, Will Brooks? Because I have lots.
Well, I think the highlight was definitely John Morrison's acrobatics. I think that was the best part. But, I mean, I did enjoy when Nexus was in there and controlling the whole thing and just throwing people up, but I think they lasted a little too long. They did that with, 8 guys in a row.
Right.
One of them being Booker T, who was, I'm sorry, I mean, I'm sure Will can elaborate better, but the whole crowd was going nuts for Booker T. And I was at this point, he was out in less than a minute. And the same thing with Kevin Nash and Diesel, how he was out, and within a minute, the whole crowd was cheering for Diesel. I think they should have called an audible in the ring and said, no, you stay out for another 5 minutes.
You can't call an audible in such a well-written, scripted-out match like the Rumble. But Will Will Brooks brought it up, so how was it live seeing these former TNA/former WCW guys show up at the Rumble?
I didn't watch any wrestling rumors for a week because I wanted to be surprised. And Eric, I even told you I called you up, or you called me up, and I basically said I don't want to know what's going on because I like to be surprised. Just like I do with Mania, I don't want to know who could be a possible winner. I just want to watch it like I used to back in the day where I didn't know who was going to be in it or I didn't know who was going to win it. So that's how I looked at it. But, yeah, Booker T and Nash got huge pops. I mean, I think Booker T, I have never heard an arena that loud in a long time. I think Booker T actually had it a little bit more than Diesel did, surprisingly.
Really? But that didn't come across so much on TV. Maybe, because it sounded like Booker T got huge pops, but the Diesel chants were sustained.
Yeah, I think, but I don't think that it came out on TV that clear, but we were chanting Booker, a lot. So I think, I mean, just from my perspective, I think Booker T had a bigger reaction, but maybe on TV it came out better when Diesel came out. What I want to say about their quick eliminations, having less is wanting more. So by not actually having them really perform a lot in the match, it makes you want to see them again. And that, to me, is where TNA made a mistake by putting them on every week. And by having these guys out for just a little bit sparks some interest in the product. They didn't do much, but if they were out there for 20 minutes, I think it kind of kills it a little bit. So,
well, I think there's a middle ground there. I'm not saying they should be in there for 20 minutes.
5 minutes would have been perfect.
I think there were a string of unceremonious eliminations between Danielson and Punk starting off, and they were there for a long time, and it was just, I guess there was a lot of people falling victim to the Nexus gang up, which was a cool little subplot in the Rumble. And by the way, when Khali came out and ended that, I love Khali. I love his DJ Punjabi style music. I love how he can't walk. He looks like fucking Frankenstein in there. But I think it was a little unceremonious how some of these guys went out. Booker and Nash especially. Nash getting thrown out by Wade Barrett, I guess, is revenge for slapping him and combing in his wife's hair, whatever Nash said he was going to do. But I think they could have been in there a little longer. Not that they had to be dominant and stay in there a long time, but speaking of Regal and Danielson, I do want to point out how fucking annoying Matt Striker is. I know the Ring of Honor message board hated my commentary on Ring of Honor DVDs. Fuck you, by the way. But this guy is just horrible. when he's saying shit like, this is a mark-out moment and I'm marking out, or when Danielson and Punk are in there, the internet's going crazy for this. Oh, shut the fuck up. Give me a break with that kayfabe breaking bullshit. Jay Leto, any thoughts on the Rumble match?
Yeah, I just want to talk for a minute about Booker and Diesel like we were. I understand the Nexus gang mentality. They needed to apply that, either with the Nexus or the Core. You couldn't do both in the Royal Rumble. If they had both groups dominant, it would have been a little too much. So they did it with the Nexus, and having Booker come out and kind of clean house on them and hit the spin-a-rooney was just such an awesome moment. It just, the pop was great. I felt great about it, but he had to get eliminated. There's no way he could have been the guy, in my opinion, to break that trend of Nexus throwing everybody out. But Diesel, I thought he should have stuck around for a little while. Because in past Rumbles, he was so dominant. I think maybe it was 1994, where he just threw out everybody and was in there by himself for like a good 15 minutes. Something like that. He could have stuck around till maybe towards the end, kind of like how Mr. Perfect did in 2002 when he made his return. But the Rumble in general, I really enjoyed it up and down. I always enjoy the Royal Rumble. I always take it, any kind of stupid shit that happens, I take it with a grain of salt, because it's the one time where you could just kind of have fun and just not even worry about the nitpicking of the little nuances that annoy you usually. And I think they do a great job always, and this year was another indication of them doing a great job with the Royal Rumble.
Between the parkour jumping that Morrison did and the cute little nod to the internet with Punk and Danielson at the beginning, and I mean, you should have seen how I jumped off the couch when Punk got thrown out by Cena. And, of course, the stories later on, some little more unceremonious stuff with Big Show and Kane. I mean, they always make a big deal about guys like Big Show or Andre in the Rumble. They never win, but they were having those video packages with that monotonous woman doing the voiceover of the Royal Rumble statistics, as we were talking about Will Brooks. And they made a big deal about Kane. He didn't even get one elimination this year, thrown out rather quickly. But that portion with the Nexus gang up in the middle was stopped by Superman Cena, which is fine. I love Superman. I think Cena should be that type of guy, and I know everyone else is sick of it, I guess, but me, I don't care. I just really didn't care for him playing around with the midget. I mean, that could have been cut out easily, I think. Corey, your thoughts on the Royal Rumble?
The opening of the Royal Rumble match was kind of odd, actually. CM Punk comes to the ring, and then suddenly all of Nexus and Core pile out, the lights flicker, and Michael Cole says, "I'm ordering you to restore order," which just sounds absolutely poetic, doesn't it? Not. And then he says, "Okay, all you boys just get out of the ring except for CM Punk, do over."
Okay.
And we're supposed to act like this entire scene just didn't happen. I thought that was a little...
Stop it!
Exactly.
Yes.
I just thought that was completely odd. Of course we're not going to act like this didn't happen. So,
well, I thought the whole idea of the two gangs fighting at the beginning was kind of cool, and I just wish that it actually would have started with the clock going, so that by the next entry, which would have been Regal, I suppose, he would have had to walk into this battle and this war. Speaking of which, Regal, I don't know about you. Does anyone else think he looks really odd lately? Between his build and his hair, I don't know, he looks like he'd be an extra from some British movie instead of some wrestler. I mean, I like Regal, I'm a fan of his, but obviously his career is winding down. He just looks weird. He looks like he might be related to those guys from Popeye with no voice. I don't know.
yeah, but I thought he did pretty well in the Rumble, though. I mean, he just came in and just started punching people in the head. I thought that was really good. Regal,
I thought Chavo's amigos, all the suplexes he was hitting on everyone for like a minute straight, that was pretty fun.
That was pretty
cool, too. Markout.
One thing I really liked a lot was when after Nash got eliminated and Big Show came out, they kind of stared at each other for a little bit in the aisle. But I think it would have been cool if they did that in the ring. But never touched each other, and then each one got jumped from behind and then never would touch each other.
It's the same idea, though, where less is more, where you tease something like that, and then you wait. But the whole point is not to give it away at the Rumble. Why not let that sit in your head? Yeah, but that's what they did at the entrance ramp where he looked back. So it's a tease that maybe this could be a Mania possible match.
In the middle of the ring would have been cool, too, though.
Now, there's too many guys in the ring that would distract that. It's better when you do it at the ramp where, Big Show's coming out. It was a perfect timing for that. I like that a lot.
Man, you see Big Show and Nash in the middle of the ring staring at each other. There's no way you can look at anybody else in the entire ring.
Yeah.
They're going to because you got Sheamus, you got Wade Barrett, you got Ezekiel Jackson, you got a lot of big guys in that ring already. Having them by themselves, two guys who have been in this business a long time, is better and is more impactful than doing it with many of the other bigger guys that are almost their height. I agree to disagree, man. But one other thing that kind of missed me off about the Royal Rumble was how many times in the middle of the ring that two faces will stop and look at the WrestleMania sign, then say, hey, okay, we got to fight now. It kind of got a little old. They did it like 5 times.
Well, the crowd certainly didn't react to at least, I think they may have done it twice, but they at least did one big Orton-Cena face-off, and it sounded like crickets. Will, what was it like in the arena? Did anyone go like, this again?
Yep, exactly. That's exactly the reaction that happened. No one cared. Even I looked at it, I was like, listen to the crowd. No one cared. When they cared was when you see CM Punk by himself against John Cena. Now that reminds me of Bret Hart, like in Austin, when they were in the Rumble in 1997. So that, to me, was the same kind of thing where I heard with these two, you know that these two are going to pull something off pretty great. And so, again, it makes a point that no one cares about Orton versus Cena. But if they waited a long time and waited till like now to have their match, it might have meant something, but it doesn't anymore because we've already seen them fight.
Yeah, you can't expect a Hogan Warrior 1990 Rumble sort of electricity when you've done it a million times. Hogan and Warrior didn't even face off before that. They weren't even in the same ring. It's not the same thing at all. But let's get to the latter portion of the match, and we will be taking your calls really shortly. The Miz throwing out John Cena I thought was spectacular. I thought that was great, hilarious. Corey, what'd you think of it?
That was all right. Certainly, we don't need Cena to win the Royal Rumble. We've seen him get enough shots at WrestleMania. We don't need another one this year.
Anyway, the ending, Santino Marella's tease with Alberto Del Rio, I thought that was very fun, very cute. I think they could have streamlined it a little more because the problem was as soon as he hit the pinch and ran around the ring, I knew they weren't going to go for it. That moment when he got in the ring and behind Alberto Del Rio, that time you got up, and I think you can vouch for this, Will Valpidez, was the feeling in the arena like, oh, my God, I think that was kind of killed as soon as he hit the pinch. I think it would have been a little better, and I'm saying this just as an editor, a perfectionist, making a little edit. I think it would have been great if they had just gone straight from the Santino's behind him to throwing him over the top and Alberto reverses it. I think it would have just been a little higher. What did you think on the tease finish? What was it like in the arena?
You're exactly right, 100%, because I had goosebumps in my body. Like, is this really going to happen right now? The crowd was nuts. Because he was laying down on my side. I was like, he's been sitting there the whole match. So I'm like, oh, my God, they're really going to save this for an ending. And, again, I would have just tried to throw him out right away because that was, again, that's the thrill. But, of course, you get the Cobra to that mark out. And, yeah, I got the crowd went nuts. It was a great tease finish. That, to me, was like one of my favorite finishes of a Rumble ever. And, of course, Alberto Del Rio wins it. Obviously, you could tell on my blog video how excited I was. But, yeah, I thought the ending of the Rumble was very, very good this year. Yeah, I'm an Alberto Del Rio mark, so I win either way.
Jay Leto, Alberto Del Rio wins. I think the new top heel, at least on SmackDown, that everyone seems to be into, and I think it's pretty much a lock. He'll be beating Edge at the WrestleMania title fight, which is cool. I mean, it's great that they finally put someone in that position, some fresh faces, and what do you think about Alberto Del Rio winning?
I'm a big fan of Alberto Del Rio. If you remember on the radio show a couple months ago, I thought he should have won the belt of the TLC. Yeah, I'm a big fan of his. I thought it was tremendous. Ricardo Rodriguez was hilarious, just yelling his name over and over again at the end. The Santino Morales thing was cool because me watching the show, I didn't even notice that Santino Morales didn't get eliminated. I had no idea. So when that came back, I was like, oh, shit, is this going to happen? Is there going to be some kind of crazy swerve right now? It would have been really cool if it did, but I thought it was well done, and Alberto Del Rio will be the World Heavyweight Champion at WrestleMania. I think that's a lock. He's been on both shows for weeks now. He's been on Raw and SmackDown, so he's basically on both rosters as it is. They really love him, and Vince McMahon really loves this guy. So, yeah, I thought it was a great way to finish the show.
All right, let's go to some calls.
Joe Schubert from Las Vegas, Nevada. Hello, Joe.
Hey, guys. How we doing tonight?
All right. And you've been saying in the chat room you got a lot to say about the Royal Rumble, so let's hear it.
First thing, Kane did have an elimination. He eliminated Ezekiel Jackson.
Excuse me?
Yeah. And the Nexus and CM Punk combined for a quarter of the eliminations in the Royal Rumble, which I thought really solidified them as a really strong stable, especially with the crap that's going on with the core. The core really didn't have any eliminations except for Barrett eliminating Nash, which on one hand, it's great. You know, Barrett gets his revenge on Nash for whatever crap that happened before, you know.
Oh, that's just, I think that was strictly as an inside joke.
My big thing was with Nexus, you know, pretty much dominating that entire thing. Did you really have to have 40 guys in order to do that?
Mm-hmm.
The beginning of the Rumble was the biggest dick tease I've ever had in my entire life. You know, the first 10 guys are all really athletic and young guys, but as they're coming out, you're knowing in your head these guys aren't going to last. They're not going to be there until the end of it.
Well, I guess that's kind of what I was getting at the beginning when I said there was a lot of dead weight that you could cut, much like 1995 when there were only about 3 or 4 guys that seemed to have a legit chance. I mean, there's always going to be our Virgils in there, but it just seemed like there was an overabundance of that this year to fill the 40.
And the one thing I did notice, and I don't know if anybody's pointed this out, but it was a really split Royal Rumble. And, I mean, the first 20 guys were incredibly Raw heavy, and the last 20 guys were incredibly SmackDown heavy. I don't know if anybody else picked up on that.
There's a brand split still? I didn't know that they ended it. Or
right?
Yeah. It's all the same shit to me.
That was definitely something I noticed, too. They did promote Raw in the beginning and SmackDown at the end, which is good because SmackDown does deserve a little bit more recognition sometimes, and it doesn't get it.
As Mason Ryan was coming out, Matt Stryker noted that on the live feed, too.
He did. I heard that myself. Now, Hornswoggle, good God, I hate hearing his name involved in that Royal Rumble. Can he do a move to anybody bigger than Tyson Kidd?
Speaking of Tyson Kidd, some people were wondering where D.H. Smith was, and I guess WWE's got nothing for him. Maybe he should ask for his release like Loki, and he could go to Japan. But how about this? How about since JTG's partner Shad got released, I know they broke them up first, but JTG, they could put D.H. Smith with him, and he could be like B2. Does anyone remember when Bull Buchanan was Cena's guy? And he would just say,
yeah.
I have it on tape.
How about JTG does some sort of rap shit, and then D.H. Smith just says, Word. And then that could be his nickname, D.H. Word Smith. Well, I do have a question for everyone about, speaking of who was in the Rumble. A lot of people were kind of wondering why Ziggler and Orton were back in it after getting title shots earlier in the night. And I don't know. I think it kind of makes sense in a way because, I mean, they lost, so that way they get right back in the game. But what do you think, Will Brooks? Should they have not been in it because they already had their title shots?
Yeah, I didn't think they should have been in it. I mean, I'm pretty sure they could have found 2 other guys to fill those spots. I mean, because Orton and Ziggler didn't really add anything to the match. They didn't add anything to it, so you could have replaced them. It would have been a big deal.
Yeah, I think they should have announced that. Did they announce that? You know, because I was I was perplexed by that. I had no idea why. I can understand if Dolph Ziggler went in because Vicky Guerrero could do something with her power. To have them both in, you know, it kind of makes sense, but they should have announced it earlier on in the show because they haven't done that, I don't think, ever. I don't remember them ever doing something like that, so I didn't really get it.
Okay, well, one other question about who wasn't in the Rumble. I think a lot of people, I'm including you in this, Will Vafides, were disappointed Triple H didn't come back. Were you? And were there more people in the arena saying it?
Yeah, when I saw Orton and Ziggler come out, that's when I knew there was going to be no Triple H because I was keeping account in my head who was left. Mm-hmm. And I just realized unless Kane or someone else is taken out in the back, you know, there's no way Triple H is coming back. It just doesn't add up. So that's why I was kind of surprised when Ziggler came out and Orton came out because I knew right there, I was like, there's no Triple H coming. And I was shocked by that. I think that's good, but that's good, though. I mean, we had a big expectation. It didn't happen, so guess what? Now we have to wait for a couple more months to see him, or even a month, probably not even a couple months. But, yeah, I think they should have explained why those two got in. Because at first you're like, yeah, but then you're like, wait a minute, how the hell did they get in this fight? Yes, but I think Triple H was a little bit of a disappointment, but I think we had enough surprises for one night anyway. I think we didn't really need a Triple H after what we've already been in store with.
Yeah, I don't think it was necessary with a Rumble that had Booker and Nash come back in it. But Corey, Triple H, of course, has been helping run things behind the scenes. Bill Treadway, on his Raw recaps, has said that it has been very visible on the last several Raws, at least up until this past one, or the other week. He wasn't too happy with those, but he said Raw's been pretty solid lately, so would you prefer to see Triple H in a backstage role? Is he not necessary, per se, to come back at this point and squash Sheamus?
I was also kind of expecting him to show up at the Rumble, and I held out until number 40, which I do believe was Kane. So when Kane came out, I knew he wasn't coming back. On the one hand, it's good that he didn't come back, because I don't think it would have worked if he had came in and won the Rumble. I think some fans might have been a little bit disappointed if that's where they would have taken Triple H. On the other hand, I'm not really liking Triple H as a backstage hand. I've not been interested in Raw as much as before. So
you were never interested in Raw.
I was in WWE.
I used to be a Raw fan, and then I think
not this century.
It was a few years ago, and then the writing just went straight to hell. But it's gone even worse since then. So I'm a little bit mixed with Triple H. I'm not sure if I want to see him back in the ring or not. I haven't quite decided. With Alberto Del Rio, one thing that's interesting about his win is that he's now the second Hispanic wrestler, if I'm not mistaken, to have won the Rumble, at least since the 2000s.
Mm-hmm.
I think the last one was Rey Mysterio. So I don't know why. I just thought that was an interesting tidbit.
It's always good to see WWE be a little more worldly, like they claim to be. So, Joe in Las Vegas, any more thoughts?
Again, with just the amount of people was just too much for me. It was just annoying. I'm looking at this paper. You can cut 10 people out just off the top of my head.
Are you planning on writing any more for our website?
They're giving SummerSlam 94, which I think is Yoko and Luger.
Actually, 94 is Brett and Owen and Undertaker, Underfaker.
That's right. So I'll be reviewing that. That should be up probably this week.
All right, great. We look forward to that. And you can submit your columns or recaps to WrestlingRoundtable.com if you send it in to WrestlingRoundtable@gmail.com. So let's go to some more calls. Ben from Austin, Texas, you've been waiting, and we want to hear what's on your mind.
Thanks. I actually thought the Rumble was pretty good. Enjoyed the Rumble, I think, a lot more than I have been in the past couple of years with the 40 men. Although I wish they would have used a lot more returns. Not a lot. Seeing Diesel and Booker T was pretty cool, but I thought maybe Sid. It would. I know Eric, this wouldn't go for you, but seeing Sid come back and just powerbomb the crap out of Bryan Daniel or something.
Well, I'll tell you what, every year I wait for Sid to come back, but when the news on Booker and Nash broke, I completely forgot about it until after the fact.
I don't know if anybody else was thinking it, but I was really hoping for Santino to somehow pull it off and just for him to main event WrestleMania.
Well, I don't know if he'd main event WrestleMania. I'm sure he would have lost it at Elimination Chamber or sometime before then. Ryan from Massachusetts, hello. Wait, I'm sorry. There you are.
What?
Hello, Ryan.
Hey, I'm going to talk about the Royal Rumble match, but real quick, I just want to go back to the World Heavyweight title match.
Sure.
Ziggler had a really great showing, but I think it would have benefited him more if it was any pay-per-view that wasn't the Royal Rumble. The Royal Rumble pay-per-view is just synonymous with people who would never get a title match any other time. I mean, Mr. Kennedy, Mark Henry, Hardcore Holly. Hardcore Holly is the one that comes to mind the most. But as far as the Royal Rumble match itself, like you said, Eric, my favorite moment was Chavo's repeated 2 Amigo, 2 Amigo, 2 Amigo, 3 Amigo.
Mm-hmm.
We saw Diesel instead of, Kevin Nash.
I was disappointed we didn't get our wizard look either.
Yeah. Something that I've noticed, at least as far as the core, something that really annoys me is
Aaron Eckhart's acting?
Of that, obviously, but I was going more towards the fact that, and it's not just the Rumble, it's just period. They keep going, we're a group of equals, but they're still heavily pushing Barrett among everyone else. I mean, if they want us to actually believe that they're equals, why not have, Justin Gabriel or Ezekiel Jackson as one of the final four?
Mm-hmm.
I did absolutely love Santino being the last guy. Unfortunately, I think the streak of the final guy getting eliminated from the Rumble gets a main event match at WrestleMania also. Streak's going to end up losing, being over, but it was great while it lasted. I mean, we all still love Santino Marella, just with a much bigger payoff than his 1 second appearance, I think, 2 years ago.
Yeah.
Overall, I thought it was a great show.
Yeah, and I also feel bad. I'm an Aaron Eckhart fan. The Core was just a really shitty movie. I think that Two-Face was very underrated in Dark Knight. So let's bring on Jamal Reynolds. Are you out in California, Jamal?
Yes, I am. Thank you very much. And just to let you know, I agree. Two-Face is one of my favorite characters in The Dark Knight. And as for the Royal Rumble, I really enjoy the hell out of it. 10 years of watching pro wrestling, I finally actually got to watch a pay-per-view. I really enjoy how they opened it with Daniel Bryan and CM Punk, even though I highly prefer Nexus versus Core. That would have been very great. When it was near the end, I almost felt very disappointed because it went down to, was it Randy Orton, Wade Barrett, Del Rio, and who was the fourth guy? Sheamus. I was thinking myself, I immediately thought right there, oh no, Del Rio is going to be eliminated. It's going to be one of these guys. I wasn't sure about Wade Barrett, and I did not want either Sheamus or Randy Orton win. But when Del Rio won, I was like,
Cena.
Yeah, and I'm not a fan of Superman. When Del Rio won, I was like, oh, wow, he actually won. And then Santino came out, I was like, very shocked, very surprised, and I have to admit, that is ridiculous. You kick someone, you have to throw someone over the ropes to get them eliminated from the Royal Rumble, but you kick the guy, they roll on the ropes, they're still in it, but in the Battle Royal, you're out the ring, period. How does this work?
That's not how it works. Battle Royals and Royal Rumbles are all over the top. Unless you're a woman, if you have a vagina, through the ropes is okay. And you can read Jamal Reynolds' recap, some more of his thoughts on the Royal Rumble. That is at WrestlingRoundtable.com. Let's go to 514 area code. You're on with Wrestling Roundtable Radio. Name and location, please.
This is the Blue Blazer in Portland. I love you guys' show, but a question I had for all you guys is, who do you guys think is the February 21st, 2011 debut of?
Well, we will be talking about that next, won't we? Let's bring on one more call before we get to that. Amato, back again. Do you have any more thoughts?
When y'all were talking about Orton and Ziggler being back in the Royal Rumble, and they had to note that nobody had previously, before that, gone back in the Royal Rumble when they had a title match. Mm-hmm. Remember in 2005 when Kurt Angle had the triple threat with JBL and Big Show, and he stole Nunzio's number and went in and he, started suplexing everybody and then was kicked out by Shawn Michaels, and they did the whole feud there. Just a little tidbit of information in case anybody had forgot that.
Thank you for bringing that up. And I'm going to bring up now the fabled 2/21/11.
Hey, Eric, can I bring up one last thing before the Rumble? It's something you didn't see on TV, actually. That's why I wanted to bring it up.
Ooh, an exclusive.
Yes. Believe it or not, Ricardo kept going on and on and on and on the entire time he was leaving that ring. So for I would say about 15 minutes after, he was still talking in Spanish, and actually he started breaking because he was talking so much he was running out of breath. And I think he was actually cursing in Spanish to the audience. So because my girlfriend actually knows a little Spanish, so she actually heard it. So it was kind of funny.
Mierda, cabrons, chinga tu madres.
He actually kept going the entire time, and it was pretty good actually. So the ending note was Ricardo just kept going for 15 extra minutes after everybody was leaving. So it was great though. It was great though. You're leaving the arena, you can still hear him talking. So.
Awesome. Thanks for that little tidbit. A Wrestling Roundtable Radio exclusive.
That's awesome.
2/21/11. What no one's pointed out about this thing is that it's the Raw after Elimination Chamber, so I don't know if that is going to play into anything or not. However, that hasn't even been brought up because the rumor mill has just gone absolutely wild. Of course, oh my God, TNA removed Sting from their roster page on their website, and you know what that means. It doesn't necessarily mean anything, I guess, but you're hearing lots of different things. Daily News in New York reports that Sting signed a 1-year contract, which sounds absurd because even though they're, of course, a famous news source, if they're reporting it, you think it would be all over the place, but it's not. So was this some conjecture that they made up, or they were inferring? They said he signed a 1-year deal with WWE. Like I said, if the Daily News reported it and it was legit, you'd think it would be everywhere, but it's not. And instead, you're finding a lot of hearsay. A lot of people are saying that Sting is not in talks with WWE at all, hasn't been in contact with them, which would seem to be counterintuitive to the idea of running a WCW-themed Hall of Fame in Atlanta this year, and the fact that WWE would have loved to have had Sting forever, it seems. But other people are saying that he's going to be back with TNA momentarily. It seems he's a free agent no matter what. Others are saying that it's just The Undertaker coming back, nothing more. Although initially, unless he's been doing a lot of rehab, kind of Cena-style rehab, I suppose. Initially, that shoulder surgery, I think it was a torn rotator cuff that he had surgery for, was supposed to keep him out until possibly after WrestleMania. So even taking into account the fake Dark Knight, we're mentioning that again, Dark Knight-style Sting with the playing guard of Undertaker shit that's been making the rounds. Jay Aletto, you just wrote a column on the Bleacher Report about Sting and WWE, so I know you've got an opinion on it. So what do you think about this 221-11 thing? Is it Sting, Undertaker, both, or neither?
There's no doubt in my mind that this is Undertaker all the way. As much as I would love it to be Sting, last night on Raw, it was 100% confirmed in my mind with the Johnny Cash music and the bell tolls.
Well, that could be Eddie Guerrero coming back from the grave.
Yeah, I don't know if Eddie Guerrero will be walking around in black boots, but there's no doubt it's going to be The Undertaker. I think Sting at this point, signing like a talent contract to come in and wrestle, there's like a very slim chance of that happening anyway, because of his, not just his age, but he doesn't really have too much to offer at this point. A couple of dream matches here and there, but you'd have to do a lot more than a couple of vignettes to clue in the new WWE universe about who Sting is and what he's meant to professional wrestling. They need to do a lot of
I think people know who Sting is.
I think people do, but I mean, figure this, right? When they debuted Goldberg, WrestleMania the night before, they showed a video package of Goldberg to make the fans aware that this guy was coming in. And anybody who was like a newer fan of the product, who didn't know who Goldberg was, got to see a glimpse of this machine, this guy. I figured that WWE would use the same kind of tactics for Sting, because they have so much footage of this guy from his career that you could literally just run as many video packages, as many highlight clips as you wanted to hype this guy coming in. And
well,
then,
they've got a whole month in March where there's no pay-per-view. WrestleMania is the first weekend of April, so they do have plenty of time to do that. Goldberg's debut was a day after that vignette aired, so they still have plenty of time.
Right, but as much, as a fan, I would love to see Sting come back. But this is something, come to WWE, I should say. But this is something where I just think it's a pipe dream at this point. I don't really see it happening in a wrestling capacity. I can see a Legends contract.
Not even for like 1 or 2 matches?
I don't see it happening, man. I wish it would, but I'm not gonna believe it until I see it. I'm not gonna believe it at all until I see it. I can see him coming back for the Legends contract to maybe go into the Hall of Fame, get some DVDs, some action figures, video games,
I think
whatever.
Hall of Fame action figure DVD, all that sort of legend stuff is a lock to happen down the line no matter what.
Yeah, absolutely. And I wouldn't be surprised if it happened sooner rather than later. I see all signs pointing to him going to TNA. I think he's going to avoid wrestling in a WWE ring. He's going to stick to his word, which he gave a few years ago when he got interviewed about never wrestling for Vince McMahon. Believe it or not, man, if Vince McMahon really wanted Sting, he'd have him. He could throw him. Money talks. I don't care if Sting's a born-again Christian and doesn't give a shit about the money. That's bullshit, man. If Vince McMahon gave him enough money, he'd be wrestling on Raw next week. Simple as that.
Well, it took him a long time to finally get Bret Hart back, so maybe Sting's got a point where he's going to break too, but let's see what you think, Will Brooke.
I'm hoping, praying seeing the foreshadowing that is Sting, because I would love to see Sting Taker at WrestleMania, because these guys can still go. I'm not saying it'd be the 5-star classic we saw like 10 years ago, but I still think it'll be a great match. And it's a dream match. Now, Jay, I see what you're saying, man, that it's more likely it's not him, but I hope it's got to be him, man. I want him to be him so bad that it has to be him. Otherwise, I'm going to be anybody else. I'm going to be disappointed. Like if it's just the Undertaker, that's going to be crap to me. I mean, I've seen Undertaker come back like 20 times now. It's not even a serious thing anymore for me if I see him come back. What do you freaking do?
Will Vafidez, is it the Macho Man?
Yeah.
Hey, he's in the video game, and he's got an action figure, maybe.
Macho Man's the only exception. I would love it if it was Macho Man instead of Sting. That's it.
You thought I was dead.
Wow, okay. If that's it, by the way, I will not be happy.
How could you not be happy with Macho Man back? But anyway, what'd you think of 221?
Not with those kind of promos. Wouldn't make sense.
Okay, the last promo, you actually see inside the house, and it pans up into a mirror where he said, "Were you expecting somebody else?"
What if DDP stalking Undertaker again?
Yes.
Yo.
From a marketing standpoint, if you've watched wrestling for a lot of years, usually when Undertaker returns, you will have hints that it's him.
I just love that you can actually say, this is what wrestling's produced, that you can actually say, usually when Undertaker returns.
Yes, I can. Thank you. Usually when they promote him coming back, they will show images of him or something of that, just to get you ready to go. This time, they're not. So maybe Undertaker redoes his character a little bit. Maybe it's a different look for him. That's where I could see that maybe being different because they buried him, so he could be coming back maybe looking a little different. You know, because he's had the same look for like the last, since WrestleMania 20. He hasn't really changed. You know, they could maybe, do something a little different with him, with his character. Or it could possibly just be like, well, Sting's free, so why don't we just run these promos because they wear the same stuff.
Well, to play on it and get people talking.
Yeah, and that's where I look at it. So could it be Sting? It's possible that all the talk, wrestling rumors, could be all that of rumors. Nothing's been confirmed. But like Jay said, until you see it that day, and the ratings will be phenomenal, I'm sure, for Raw that day. But until you see it, maybe Undertaker comes out, and then Sting comes out. So you really think maybe it's Undertaker the whole time, but then Sting comes out of nowhere, and it could really be Sting.
He's come out of the
It's a nice build. It's a nice little build for the next month. I think it's intriguing that we'll keep watching these promos and trying to figure out what's really going on. And I think that's really the best part about WWE's marketing is that they make us think about, something. That's how you promote a character. That's how Alberto Del Rio got into SmackDown. They did promos of him, and they did very good promos of him. They're doing the same thing now for whether it be Undertaker or Sting or someone else.
Well, it's definitely gotten people talking, whatever it is. So what do you think it is, Corey?
WWE sent out a newsletter that reads, 2/21/11, come see the Raw show in Venice Beach, California. The Undertaker returns tonight. I'm guessing that The Undertaker's coming back. Way to go. You just spoiled it, WWE.
Not necessarily. A lot of that stuff is made months beforehand and doesn't necessarily indicate that it's what's going to happen, and plans change all the time. That being
Corey,
said,
on the very
maybe
bottom
it did.
On the very bottom of that newsletter, it's going to say, card is subject to change. Thank you.
It would be cool if it is Sting, because then we could have the classic dream match of Sting versus The Undertaker, and in a way it would kind of be closure. I mean, this is the one match everybody thought was going to happen when McMahon bought up what was left of WCW. And
that's not the one match. There were many.
Well, true, but it was the top match that everybody wanted to see. Sting and Taker, Sting and Taker.
No, it wasn't.
I think Hulk Hogan versus Stone Cold might have been a little bit more important.
Austin Goldberg or Rock Hogan or any of those sort of... I mean, Sting and Undertaker's definitely in there, but I think they're just a couple spots below. But that being said, continue, Corey.
I still think it would be a cool match. I remember it being on so many different wrestling magazines back in the day. if it is
fans have been talking about it forever.
Exactly. It would be the most ultimate epic match, and the biggest Hail Mary to get the ratings out of the 3s and back towards at least a 4 or a 5. I mean, there.
I think you're way exaggerating that.
I don't know. It still might work.
This ain't the Attitude Era, sweetheart.
Yeah, a 5? WWE hasn't done a 5 in fucking years.
I can dream, can't I?
Well, let's keep the dream alive, and I think that's going to wrap it up here. And I wanted to point out that there were some segments that I had promised to do this week. Just don't think we had the time. I wanted to do, and I said when we followed up on debuts and returns on the show before that we couldn't stretch it out anymore, but we are. I want to do debuts and returns, the Mixed Martial Arts edition. Didn't have the time to squeeze it in this go-around, but would also like to follow up on our last submission round Q&A. There were some questions that did not make the air and some panelists who were not on the air for that show that is on YouTube in our podcast form, WrestlingRoundtablePodcast.com. There's some other questions I'd like to throw out there, so going to save that for next time. MMA debuts and returns and submission round Q&A extended. But also we're going to be talking about Strikeforce Fedor versus Antonio Bigfoot Silva, which some of us will be going to on Saturday at the Izod Center in East Rutherford, New Jersey. And we'll also be talking about TNA's Against All Odds pay-per-view and, of course, all the latest goings-on in pro wrestling and mixed martial arts. So join us next time. In the meantime, please join us on WrestlingRoundtable.com and shop at WrestlingRoundtable.com store for the T-shirt, Pro Wrestling Respect DVDs, and our Amazon store. Check out our recaps, newsletter, bios, and much more at WrestlingRoundtable.com. So for the panel of Will Brooks, Will Vafides, Jason Aletto, Coriander Ake, and all the callers, thank you very much for joining us. I'm the host, Eric Santamaria. Thank you, and join us next time on Wrestling Roundtable Radio.